Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Matter of Design, the interview series that gives you ultimate access to some of the most talented and passionate leaders in the design industry. I'm Nicole Hernandez. Here at Matter Interiors, our passion is sharing the stories of the people behind the most innovative and world-class ideas, along with leading businesses in the design community. There's nothing like the power of design. It moves us to look beyond our four walls to the world around us for inspiration. It motivates us to connect with others and collaborate. Thank you so much for joining us. This is A Matter of Design. Hi, Ted. How are you?
Good, Nicole. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. It's so good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Definitely excited to talk with you.
Yes, so let me formally introduce you. We are so fortunate to be joined by Ted Bradley, who has just launched his lighting design studio. Ted Bradley's studio is based in Boulder, Colorado. I'll let him get into his story, but he has spent the last year working on this gorgeous lighting fixture that was nearly an impossible feat of engineering. So he's officially launched his business. He's already turning heads. Ted, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Love that introduction. I'm just excited to share the story with you.
Thank you so much. Can you start off by talking about the inspiration behind the Sansara chandelier, which is behind you, and how you found your path to lighting design?
Yeah, definitely. So it all started, it must have been about 6 years ago. I was walking along the Pacific coast with my brother and his wife, and just had this vision for a sculpture that had these beautiful white porcelain rings all in a row affixed to a metal spine. And it was almost like the arching ribs of a whale skeleton bleached in the sun, laying on the beach. And the image of that just stuck in my head. I couldn't get it out, and I continued to work at my job for must have been four, almost 5 years. But yeah, I would just wake up in the middle of the night with just visions and dreams of this same sculpture and sketching it over and over again in different forms. And in the end, I just decided, wow, I've really got to, I've got to try to make this for sure.
So at the time, you are working as a project manager at Google. You've been there for about a decade, and you decided to take this leap of faith and leave your job. Tell me about, what was the turning point where you had the courage to do that?
Yeah, I think it was just a building, really, a building of a desire to do that. I did love my job. There was a lot of opportunity. It was very exciting to work on these big products with lots of users. But I think also the years just started to tick by, and life is so short. I just saw this thing, there's this idea of like a job that you go and do every day that maybe you don't love, a career that you go and do and there's opportunity and it builds. But then the last thing is a calling. What's your calling? And I have this feeling that building sculptures is my calling. I think that I'm being tapped to do that. And so yeah, so I took the leap of faith, and here I am.
So you'd always had a passion and a love for ceramics. Why ceramics in a lighting fixture? Can you talk about what prompted the choice of material for your Sansara chandelier?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, first I'll show you, talk about that passion, that long passion. May I share my screen? I'll show you a few photos.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is my Instagram feed, and I posted this a few weeks back. It was so funny. I didn't even realize myself that this sculpture that I made actually has all the themes I've been passionate about since I was in high school. This is a steel ring that I bent and welded together when I was 15 years old, and I brought it out into the woods with me and tried placing it in a bunch of different locations. And I just couldn't get enough of this aesthetic of the metal and the perfection of a circle juxtaposed against something so chaotic and natural and soft and organic like this ring. And I'll show you the sculpture, but actually these photos right here that I did when I was 13 and lined up is actually the exact same image of the sculpture.
Yeah.
So, and then these, I've actually made ceramic rings before.
Don't skip over that one.
Okay, all right, okay.
Oh, that's great. So this is another sculpture that you had created in high school.
Yeah, exactly. A metal sculpture.
Okay.
Um, and in college, I found myself creating stacks and stacks of ceramic rings, and I
Wow.
just couldn't get enough of the look of them. And actually made this when I was 13. It was about 60 bowls all stacked up in a row, again, out in nature. And it's the same idea of this repetition of organic man-made form against the nature, the beauty and the chaos of nature.
You keep returning to the circle. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're so drawn to the circle?
Yeah, I think, boy, Nicole, I just don't know. I just love it. I really don't know. Yeah, I think it's something about the softness and the intersection of the softness of it with the perfection of it.
Mhm.
That's, I don't know. I really, really love it, actually.
So just to kind of go back, you spent about a decade at Google as a project manager. You have a background in mechanical engineering. Then it was just a little over a year ago, you decided to take this leap of faith. You've had this vision for about 6 years. Tell me about what the last year has been like for you to get to the finished product behind you.
Yeah, definitely. So in my head, I imagined that, I'd hop into a studio and make these rings, and it'd be the same as making a bowl or a ceramic mug, and maybe it would take a few months. I
Right.
started in October of 2019, and I thought I'd be done by the end of the year. That wasn't my experience at all. It took over 12 months. I ended up trying many different processes. I had hundreds of failures. I worked by hand through over 1,300 pounds of clay um, to make it happen, which was absolutely exhausting and very difficult. But yeah, I can share some of the process with you if you're interested.
That would be great.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen again.
You had been told that what you had envisioned and what you were trying to accomplish was nearly impossible. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought that I would just put this thing together, but then I talked to a couple master mold makers to get advice. I talked to a clay chemist, and they said, "Hey, just so you know, what you're trying to do is either impossible or it's going to be a 10 out of 10 difficulty.
Right.
Um, and if you do successfully manage to create a perfect porcelain ring in the shape that you're wanting,
Right.
the difficulty of doing that is going to be every bit as difficult as figuring out how to dry it. It's going to be every bit as difficult as learning how to fire it." And it's a little embarrassing to be candid. I didn't believe them, so I jumped in anyway. And boy, they were right. It took maybe 9 months to figure out a process to properly form the ring,
Wow.
and then another 2-3 months to dry it. And then meanwhile, working the whole time on learning how to fire it. And there were challenges in every step of the way.
So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this is some of the early bright-eyed, bushy-tailed excitement of getting in the studio and working. This is my first mold system. I ended up creating 6 different mold systems, and this is first testing light diffusing lenses. And you can see it's really beautiful how they lay over LED strip, and there's all sorts of different things about color, temperature, and warmth and diffusion properties.
Right.
Um,
So just
and
clarify really quickly. So you have the ring, and then the
yeah,
ring is a channel of LED.
exactly. Maybe I can actually take 1 second here and show you this sculpture. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, no, that's great. I just wanted to clarify what we were looking at in your photos.
Yeah, so this is the actual final sculpture,
So gorgeous.
and it's a series of porcelain rings all attached to this metal spine. And you can see it's a little bit representative of, um, rib cages attached to a vertebrae.
Yes.
And inside of each ring is this very narrow channel. And inside of the channel are embedded these LEDs laid over with a light diffusing lens. So the end effect looks about like that.
Thank you. That was such a great shot, and it's so gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, so I'll share the screen and tell you about the process here. So yeah, to get that channel, my original idea was I'll build this mold, and then I made this telescoping arm with these razor blade cutters on the end that I would spin around and cut this, cut out this the channel for the LEDs was my original vision. So it goes roughly like that. And whoops, I was able to get my first ring, a few stacks of rings, but you can see there's a long, long way to go. So these are me testing different sizes.
We're not seeing
And
we're not seeing your screen if you want to pull that up again.
okay. Oops. I'll share the screen. Great.
Perfect.
Okay. So I was able to create a few rings, but you can tell there's a whole lot of different problems with these rings very early on. This is sort of a prototype. So I knew I'd have to start building the bigger ones. So I built a full scale model to test out the size. And there's a lot of machining work as well to build all the fixtures to create the actual mold. So this is like working on a 3-axis mill. And then this is my second mold system. It's much larger, and you can tell now it's suspended on this cabling system because it's very heavy. But I was able to start to achieve this larger, more perfect rings. But plenty of problems still. For example, with a bowl or a mug, you can easily just pick it up in your hand without distorting it too much. But not so with a ring. Even something as simple as lifting a ring requires this totally custom apparatus to be built that that can actually slide in and pick it up very gently without bending it.
Oh my God. Then you're picking it up and taking it to fire? Is that?
Yeah, taking it out to dry in a rack sort of like this, and then eventually firing it. I had innumerable cracking issues. I lived in the world of porcelain cracks and just learned everything I possibly could. And then not only were the rings cracking, but actually the mold was started cracking as well. So I had to weld this entire metal armature on the inside of the mold that the plasters then poured around to make sure, sort of like rebar inside of concrete, so it can't break.
Oh my God. It's such an intersection of your background in mechanical engineering and fine.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I think that's part of what drives me to do this. I tested dozens and dozens of clays. You can see that this is lined up from a creamish color clay all the way to the whitish clay.
Okay.
And I tested all the different clays at different temperature combinations. This is the new mold system here, the final one. It's full scale. It has that same razor blade arm cutter that moves around. And this is my first successful ring. That I was excited about, so I signed. And this was an entire garbage can full of cracked and broken rings along the way.
And going back to the clay, I understand you've sourced it from New Zealand. How did you find that source? And tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So I was really attracted to porcelain because it's so brilliant, bright white. Unfortunately, I learned that the more translucent and the brighter white it becomes, the more difficult it is to work with, which is why I was having all these cracking issues that you'd never have if you were just using a studio ceramic. But yeah, in all my research, I found that there was this special clay that was sourced out of New Zealand that just had the most beautiful color. And so it's very expensive and it's very hard to work with. But I was in the mindset of this. I was in this no compromise mindset. I wasn't concerned with cost or complexity or anything. I had to see this vision to full reality. So that's what happened.
So you're really going for perfection.
I was, yeah. A small side story: I built my first set of rings and actually brought them over to Kenya and was working with some artists over there. This is a Kenyan painter painting on the rings, and I was speaking with a nonprofit about creating a collaborative lamp that they could sell to raise money. So that's a project that we'll hopefully be launching this fall as well.
How exciting! That's great.
Yeah. Am I boring you, or should I tell you a little the last little bit of this
Oh,
process here?
yeah, please keep going. So
Okay.
it's like what month 6, 7, what would you say?
This is probably about month 8 or 9, I'd say. Yeah.
You have your first finished ring, and now what is the next step that you're moving into?
Now I'm doing things like glaze testing. I tested, a myriad of different glazes, and I had to apply stains to the ring to make sure that someone's thumbprint wouldn't end up permanently staining it. I had to test the current through the LED strips, and I embedded thermocouples in a sample of porcelain ring to understand the temperatures to make sure it was going to be safe for use over time.
Did you
This
have
is
any
more.
issues installing the LED with cracking? Did you ever install LED and it broke the ring or anything like that?
So the thing is the rings, when before they're fired, they're so delicate that if you tap it too hard, it'll break.
Oh my
But
God.
after they're fired, I've hung an 80-pound weight off of a ring and it doesn't. Yeah. So they're very strong once they're fired.
Okay.
Um, and then we move kind of into this metal phase and this assembly phase. So this is this vertebrae, this brass vertebrae, a stack of perfect rings. The first time I ever embedded, this is actually the bucket, the 80-pound bucket hanging off the
Oh
ring here.
my gosh.
Yeah. And then my first ring with lights in it, part of the assembly process. And then I built this entire sample to send to UL for safety certification, continually having cracking issues and brainstorming how to solve those. My first full set of ready to go porcelain rings, and then working through learning how to do patinas on brass and different finishes and that sort of thing. And then finally moving into the assembly of the final sculpture. And this is the excitement of putting on the very last ring, and then having a good friend of mine come out and photograph it for the first time.
Wow. That must have felt so incredible after all the trial and error over the past year.
Yeah, it was. This is kind of a fun video of it being unveiled for the first time to friends and family at an event. So that was it.
So, I mean, through all this trial and error and all the challenges and setbacks, what kept you going? What was your why?
I think that it was, above and beyond, there were mornings where it was 7 a.m. on a Saturday and I'd rather be out doing fun things, but I was already in the studio working, which was not fun. Except that at the end, after all those years of working, in corporate tech, I think that I just had to recognize that every day that I was working with my hands and working on art and sculpture and having the opportunity to pursue this dream of mine really is a gift. And so, so I just stayed grateful for the process, even though it got difficult.
So, I feel like in our work, we have moments where we want to design something, we have a vision, we're not quite sure how we're going to get there. And it's somewhere in between, like knowing that it is somehow possible and getting there. That's how I kind of get in the zone. How do you
Yeah.
how do you get in the zone? And tell me about, I guess, once you're in the zone, is it when you're creating, or is it more in the inspiration phase?
Yeah, I think there's different zones, right? I think that the creative phase is a totally different zone. The creative phase is getting rooted on a feeling, and then over many days, different visual manifestations of that feeling will just like pop in my head, and I'll toss them if I don't like them, and then eventually, if I find one, I'll sketch it out. Getting in the zone for the making process is totally different. That is just, I'll have studio mates often who will walk up to me and be like, "Did you hear me?" Like, and I'm like, "No." They're like, "I've been saying your name." Like, I don't know. Yeah. So I definitely get very focused when I'm in the studio working.
That's so great. So now you've launched your business. Are you direct to the trade? Will you be represented through showroom? Have you even made that decision yet?
Yeah, I'm just exploring that right now. So my official launch was this last week when that article went out, and yeah, my plan is definitely primarily to work with interior designers and architects. Um, yeah, and just I think that I have a collection of about 30 different concepts. So this is just one of those 30 concepts, and the idea for me is not that I want to build every one, which I hope I will someday, but really, folks can see all of these concepts, and I want that to be a launching off point to spark new ideas for sculptures that we can make in collaboration with the designer. I can, I have a studio. I'm excited and passionate about the process, and we can do just about anything. And there's a lot of opportunity for variation with these porcelain rings and the metal spines and all that.
Yeah, I love that you can customize the piece for the space. Is there a space in particular that you would just love to see one of your light fixtures?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see, I love the intersection of sculpture and nature. And so someday I hope to see my sculpture in a space where the backdrop behind it is some sort of beautiful scene. And that would be a special opportunity, I think.
I can't wait to see your fixtures out in the world.
Thank you.
Why is design so important to you, and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's really, I think design is ultimately an opportunity to share something that I'm really passionate with. So it starts with this feeling that I have, and then flipping through these visual realizations of that feeling is the initial inspiration, and then from there, the design becomes intersected with the whole process of actually making it and making sure it's great for the person who will enjoy it. Things like light temperatures and the light casting and dimming and sizing and the look and feel in a space. So it goes from feeling to vision to designing for the client in mind to the making, and then ultimately the sharing. I think that really, for me, this is an opportunity to share something that's special with me,
Mhm.
and be rewarded by having other people get to enjoy it.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for your time. It's so inspiring to hear your story and see the gorgeous chandelier behind you. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Please take a look at my website. I'd love to share all the different concepts with you. It's tedbradleystudio.com. And I have a fledgling Instagram page as well where I'm posting all my images. So that's tedbradley.studio.
All right. Well, best of luck as you launch your new business, and thank you again for your time.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye now.